Hey, and welcome to the Spiritual Awakening Annual YouTube Summit with me, your host, Iona Mead at the SoulLegacyTV, Spiritual Business Success with Iona. And today I have another special guest. Please welcome Natasha, Temple of Akasha, right?
Hello, everyone. Hi, nice to be here. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So what I usually do, Tasha, is explain a little bit before you share your spiritual awakening story and what it is that you do and how it is that you do it, right? I like to tell just a little bit of the connection, which I love our connection, a little bit of the connections and the backstory to why I've invited each guest and how we've actually come to have this collaboration in this joint vision partnership, as I say. So our connection is quite new, isn't it?
Very recent, but very aligned.
Very recent and very aligned. So for those of you who may be interested, as in, you know, you want to get your gifts out there and actually you want to partner up and you want to interview people who really resonate with you. I was doing some research for a video on calling in your soul tribe, how to find your soul tribe on YouTube. And so I saw Tasha's video and I was like, oh my God, I think you shared 3 tips on. They were just so aligned with me. And I was like, oh, I have to reach out to you. And actually, I really want to feature you and you know, hear your story. So we jumped on a call for the first time yesterday. I say jumped on a call. We just sat on this call.
It was like 3 hours of our lives.
3 hours. We were on the call for 3 hours yesterday, and I was like,
for me.
absolutely blew my mind. And I did announce in the attendees Facebook group, like this is going to be a good one. So I'm really excited. We had so many conversations about so many things and all of this awakening journey, and there's a lot of alignment and there's a lot of similarities. So just know that I've brought this episode to you, and every single episode in this series, in this YouTube summit, so you know that you're not alone. You know, that's what I want you to know. You're not alone. And I honor you, Natasha, for sharing and being so open and so vulnerable. And I know that it's going to help a bunch of people. So can we dive into your first spiritual awakening? You can share what it is that you do if you want to before you dive into that. But I kind of tend to think that there's a connection, you know, with what we do and our spiritual awakening. So wherever you want to go with it, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, thank you. So I am a spiritual embodiment guide. So my focus is really taking a lot of spiritual concepts that we hear a lot about and really bringing them into our humanity. Because a lot of spiritual content, a lot of spiritual principles can seem very abstract, and there are certain spiritual paths that can be very transcendental, so they can really focus on the higher chakras and being quite disembodied. And there is that tendency in the New Age community for this kind of disembodied, only love and light, which is it's very much kind of only playing in one polarity. And so my role as someone like yourself who's been through a lot of duality, who's really played in contrast in this life, is to marry the both spirit and matter, and it's to descend the spiritual into the human and to really know that both are valid. We are both. We're here, in my opinion, to be an embodiment of that which we are in spirit, but in form, and we're here to live conscious lives as humans. And so, I would say that my current sort of place in the world as a guide for others and as a healer has come directly off the back of my own path, as it always does. You know, our greatest gifts often come off the back of our greatest challenges, and we can alchemize those to then serve others. And that's very much the path of embodiment. For those that aren't aware, before I dive in, embodiment, it means to be in its simplest form. It means to be in the body.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I was going to pick up on that. So I'm happy that you made that, you know, clarification. Thank you.
Because I think it's sort of chucked around a lot, and it's kind of hard to know, well, what does that actually mean? And it's in its simplest form, it means to be in the body, present with what's here, expressing through the body, using the body as the vehicle for us to really be in presence and communion with this life, rather than the mind. So it's really a descent into the feminine principles. So my journey started with mental health initiation. So with my dad, with a very unstable childhood. And then I would say that my primary awakening, the moment when I started to become conscious of the ego structure and the mind, was when I was living in Vietnam. So this was 2016.
Right.
So this is 7 years ago now. And I had been chronically depressed. As I mentioned to you before, I'd had at least one suicidal episode by that point. And I had gone to Vietnam after traveling over the summer, and it awakened something in me. I was in a grad job that I hated. I'd done everything everyone had told me to do. I got the university degree, first class. I'd walked the path I was told to walk, right? And I denied myself. I didn't go into acting like I wanted to do. I walked the conventional path. I got the English degree. I got a first class. I was in the grad job. I was so miserable because I was just completely, denying my soul, that I then decided to go traveling for, initially it was going to be 2 weeks, and then I just decided to keep going. So it was 2 months, and that reawakened something in me that was close, like I was close to losing the will. And so that being able to see outside of my comfortable parameters, outside of the everyday things we move through, that to me is why traveling is so important and so helpful on our awakening journey, because it just gets us out of our paradigm, out of our limiting beliefs and our self-concept, allows us to see the world through a very different lens, culturally, spiritually. And so traveling probably actually was my big initiator. And it was when I traveled that I was in, I did the route that most people will do when they're coming from the West, which is this, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. And I was traveling around for 2 months, and I just, a spark was lit. And I was like, whatever this is, I'm not going back to feeling dead inside. I will follow this flame that has been sort of ignited in me. And when I was living in Vietnam, it was challenging. I was 24, I was on my own. I was in Hanoi, which is like it's very, very busy, crazy city. So I was on my bike, teaching English, dotting all around this crazy city, both having all these really crazy, beautiful new experiences, and also deeply grappling with feelings, really unwell mentally still, really feeling, going through these highs and these lows. And then I met my ex-partner out there, who was older than me and who had actually been on the spiritual path for a little while. And he gifted me a very beautiful copy of Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. And that book, which I've heard, Eckhart Tolle is such an activator in our world. His work for me is like, he's here to just begin that. He's a catalyst. He's such a catalyst. And he was for me. I read that book, and it was just one of those moments where I was able to recognize that the thing I felt like I'd been battling my whole life, which we could call the ego structure, something that I used to say would hijack me. It was like a force that would hijack me in an argument or in conflict or in times of real fear, where it was almost like I was no longer myself, and I became this either jealous or angry, this person that was almost really reactive to life. And the way I was very cold, and especially in old relationships, I used to have all of these behaviors, and I thought, who is that? Because when I'm in my heart, that's not who I am. But when I get triggered, I'm this other person. And reading that book allowed me to witness the ego structure, why it's there, and to recognize that this isn't the true self. This is an aspect of the consciousness which I wouldn't say is wrong, but absolutely has limitations. It's there, it's attached to the animal body. It wants safety. It has a certain degree of programming, which means that it's always going to have its limitations, and we can't allow that to govern us. That's not the true expanded nature of who we are. And so I think reading that book woke me up to, okay, so there's hope. Because if I'm not this thing that seems to hijack me whenever I'm angry or triggered or whatever, there's hope that maybe I can become more of who I truly am, even in those moments. And so it really began a path of, just a really crazy, wild, beautiful, expansive journey. I always kind of describe it a bit like having a crash course in awakening, because I was 24, I'm 31 now. And I think the rate at which things happened, it was in very quick succession. So I was in Vietnam, I met my ex. Very quickly, I started meeting, you know, Qigong masters, people that were teaching me about these different ancient systems and energy healers, things that I had no idea about any of this, right? I was out in this country. My ex knew these people. He was kind of floating around and networking with them. I was just like, yeah, I'll try these things. I want to feel better. I want to get better. And then you know, bearing in mind at this point, I was still mentally quite unwell. I had no awareness of trauma. I had no awareness of doing the inner work, so to speak. I'd never been in therapy. And I didn't have anyone in my field that was really sort of allowing me, apart from my ex, to begin to recognize that we don't always have to feel this way, that these are often consequences of unresolved things within us. So then this kind of journey unfolded where we then left Vietnam, and I was physically unwell as well. I was dealing with thyroid issues. And then we traveled to South America for 5 months, South and Central America, and had just a succession of many awakenings, because there's never just the one, right? It's like we might have one moment where we become more conscious of something. Where there's maybe the moment that sticks out to us. But as you know, as we spoke about yesterday, there are many moments in life that feel like another unraveling of the identity that we've carried with us, the false sense of self, if we like. And so it was like a journey of, you know, traveling, being exposed again to lots of different systems. I spent 10 weeks in Peru, and I think at least 6 of those weeks in the jungle in like the Amazon basin. And I was with I had the most blessed experience to be with a very real, very humble shamanic family who'd been working in their lineage with ayahuasca and many other plants for over 3,000 years. They were part of the Shipibo tribe. So they were very renowned in their village, very humble. I spent a month with them, had many awakenings, not necessarily with ayahuasca itself, but just being in that environment, meeting the people I met, you know, being in this wildly different state of mind, witnessing indigenous wisdom, witnessing the wisdom of the earth. So many like bang, 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 bang light bulb moments. And it was after that trip that I had the awakening to the corruption on this planet. And that we are living in it was again, through a series of meeting people, through a series of journeys I had, just the rose tinted spectacles started to fall away. And I started to see what had been actually for me as someone that trained in English and journalism. And I had been at one point, very adamant about going into the industry in some way, first as an actress, then wanting to be a journalist, then wanting to, you know, in some way be part of the entertainment industry. And had really kind of held actors, actresses, the music icons on a pedestal to some degree, and really loved the juice of that industry. When I had this awakening, everything fell away, and it was a big collapsing of an ego identity, that the world that I've almost felt very comfortable in, my relationship to my government, my relationship to the media, it's built on fallacy. It's built on you know, hierarchy and power imbalances and deep-seated corruption. And so, you know, after a series of you know, of other awakenings, we then went to India after living in the UK for a little while, and I was going out there to do a yoga teacher training, and that's when I had my Kundalini awakening. So that was in 2019. So between
so was it 2017, then 20, and then this next 2019?
Yeah. So by summer of 2017, we'd got back from South and Central America. Kind of took about a year and a half to land, to integrate. We were living and working in the UK. I then had another suicidal episode while we were back, because this is, for me, this is the thing when we're going through these awakening processes. It can often feel like it's getting worse before it gets better, because you're becoming more conscious of the pain that you once avoided.
Yes.
Right. So it's like, okay, now I'm becoming more conscious and aware of my body. I took up yoga when I moved to Vietnam, and that had been my consistent tool for 6 years, or for 5 years, however long, or just before. It was years of building connection to the body, becoming aware, opening myself up to different mindsets. And then by the time we'd got to India, and I was going out to do my yoga teacher training, you know, I'd gone through these multiple disillusions of worldviews and paradigms. And I was also then coming into contact with a lot of deep-seated pain within me.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a comment. Let me just check this. Okay. Maybe.
I don't think so, buddy. No.
Go on, keep going. Live.
So yeah, I think another very profound and very important awakening, and something I want to something I think I want to draw attention to, because I think there's still a lot of stigma attached, was I was in therapy with a trauma-informed practitioner at the beginning of 2019. So before we went out to India and I was still living in the UK, I was in therapy for 9 months that year. And I feel that it's so helpful and essential, especially when we think that there's like really nothing going on, but then we start we have either mental health issues, or we find ourselves having to use coping strategies regularly to feel okay. Mm-hmm. I think it's so essential that everyone gifts themselves the space where the aspects of them that have yet to be integrated can be seen and witnessed. It's really difficult, especially in the beginning, to do this on our own. Yeah. So therapy provided this container for me to start really taking up space of, okay, I don't want this child part to start spilling into my adult relationship. I don't want to start being the wounded girl in my relationship with men. Yeah. I need to start understanding, why do I have this insecure attachment style? Why do I respond in these ways? Where do these insecurities come from? Where is this pain coming from? And so therapy, I had a really incredible therapist who worked in a very creative and dynamic way. And that was another awakening, to really to go through somatic releasing. So really to actually start moving trauma, stress in the body. And what was interesting was I'd done 9 months of therapy. We'd booked to go to India, and we'd reached a natural point in the therapy where I said to my therapist, even if I wasn't traveling, I think I would probably have reached the capacity in terms of what I feel we can do in this particular space. Yeah. Because what started to happen was I realized that my body needed to audibly scream and move energy in like a way that I didn't feel comfortable in that space, because my therapist was located above a shop and sandwiched between other buildings. So it wasn't a particularly sort of anonymous space. It was very much sandwiched in around other things. But there was just this sense of my releases need to be bigger. Like, this is no longer just me crying. There's rage that needs to move. There's just like, there's movement and aliveness that needs to come through me that maybe I've never ever moved in that way before, but it's there. Yeah. So we went to India with the intention for me to do a 1 month, 200-hour yoga teacher training in Goa. And we had a few weeks out there before my training started. And then 1 week into the training, the morning we'd started like a second style, which is called Ashtanga yoga. It was just a crazy experience. I just woke up. Within an hour, I started feeling quite unwell, like nauseous. I couldn't eat my breakfast. I was sat in the lecture and I started sweating and I was freezing cold. So I was developing what looked like a fever. And then by midday, I was really, really, really unwell, and they thought I had dengue fever. And they told me to go to the hospital, which was quite, not necessarily close to where we were, because we were quite rural. And they said, if not, you really need to go to the GP that's like on the road between here and the other town we were near. And I knew in my body, by that point, I knew my body well enough to know, especially as an empath, someone that feels very sensitive, very highly sensitive to energy. I could feel this block in my throat, that there was that energy that wanted to move in therapy, that wanted to really just, this emotion that wanted to come out, wanted to be audible. That was back again. And Ashtanga yoga, for those that aren't aware, it's quite like I suppose we could say like a rigorous practice. It's very purifying for the body. It's very heating. It's made up of a series of yoga asana postures and breath work and whatnot that really tests the body. And so I had been doing this practice for 2 hours before these symptoms come on, and it was almost like I had started to purify the body to the degree that this energy couldn't stay any longer. It had to come out. So they ordered me a taxi, and I said to the man, just take me back to my hotel room. My ex was waiting on the porch. He was reading a book. And it just started monsoon raining as I approached the hotel. And initially I thought, oh God, what are the chances that, like, we've been out here all this time, we've not caught any of the monsoon rains yet. What are the chances that just as I'm walking out now, there's monsoon rain? But there was such a gift in the timing of all of this. You know, I said to Tim, I just looked at him and I said, something's not right. I think I need to have a release now. And I laid down on the bed, and I was obviously stripped off. I was having this fever. And he went outside, and it was absolutely hammering it down. I've never heard rain like it. And he said, you can have your audible release now. No one can hear you. He was like, just go for it, Tash. Just let it out. Like, whatever is in you, let it out. And I did. And then the Kundalini awakening process started. And within about 15 minutes of like screaming and crying and letting perhaps, well, certainly lifetimes of energy move, the process took on its own, you know, I was no longer in control. The ego was pushed aside, and I became the witnesser of my experience. So my consciousness shifted to me being very much in my body, and the one that's very conscious and aware of, like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do that thing, to just observing. I was just witnessing my body being moved for me in these different ways. And I was starting to then see in my mind's eye all of this, it's like a movie playing out, like past life, ways I died in other lives. Just crazy remembrance of these things that had come through in drabs. And then, the process just took on a life of its own. I started channeling, which is one of the things I do now, that my light language came online during that. And I started singing and chanting. I was speaking Sanskrit. There was just a really, again, very profound, and the level of consciousness that I was in, I was pure consciousness, witnessing the person that I call Natasha. I was no longer Natasha. It was just the most profound experience of my life, and I think I passed out at the end because my body was so spent. I chucked up and hocked up and cried like 3 bucketfuls worth of like tissues, and it cleared my whole body physically. And by the time I was done, I passed out, and I couldn't continue with the yoga teacher training. It took me about 4 or 5 days just to be able to like speak and come back to. It blew me so wide open. And that awakening has been the one that has really changed the trajectory, of my life in a very profound way.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I'm just like listening and observing and just taking it in. And usually I'll take notes, and I'm like, I'll come back to this, and I'm like, no, I need to be present to hear what you're saying, because if I'm writing, I'm going to miss it. It was just, you shared a lot there. And I just want to back up a little bit, if I may, just in terms of you coming to your awakening. You said through traveling was a lot of it. And so when I talk about on the Spiritual Awakening Summit, and I talk about connecting the areas that we have our awakenings through, whether it's through our contribution, our purpose, our health, our emotions, our environment, our relationships, our spirituality, and our finances. I think you covered just about everything there where you've gone through that awakening. And that's the message that I want to really share, is all of the things that you've gone through that awakening. And you said there's multiple, and we know that, but when we're going through it, we don't know, one, there's going to be another one, and 2, that it's actually that in that growth and birthing something within us that we don't even know, and shifting that consciousness. And I love that you say the environment, that the traveling and the experiencing, and then people coming in to your life that you needed to give you that wisdom and that enlightenment, and that you've gone through so much. And I talk about spiritual awakening and then our spiritual ascension tools, and it sounds like, and you may have used other tools as well, but it sounds like you yoga and embodying, just bringing back into your body and being present was one of the things that were really profound on your journey. There was so much in there with your journey and connecting the dots I want to ask if, when you were going through it, and you said, you know, you were mentally unwell, and you had, and thank you for sharing, you know, the depths of a spiritual awakening. It takes many of us to those depths, including myself, and there's no shame around that. It just is what it is, you know, in that moment and in that time. So how, you see, you've talked about the really, really profound moments over a short period of time. Really, it's an extensive period of time, but a short period of time. So you've gone from one country, then another country. Were you guided in terms of the next steps? Like, this is the thing that's happening now. Okay, this is a full circle. Where you've gone to different places. Why the different places? Why the different environments that you've gone through, that you've gone to? Did they speak to you? Because I want to travel. I'm at that place where getting ready and building my business to travel. And like you say, people want to go around Thailand. You've gone to so many different places. Do you have a sense of why you did the journey that you did in the way that you did it?
Yes, I feel like I feel like we're always given breadcrumbs. I feel like for me now, the breadcrumbs are given to me just the next step, But back then, we were working over the summer of 2016, and we were already getting the guidance to go to Peru, especially to go to South America. And it was, you know, again, it wasn't for any really big, profound spiritual reason. It was just that actually we're working out here. We don't really fancy just going back to England. We want to experience more of the world. And we both had this sense of wanting to be in South America. My ex was really instrumental in a lot of that journey, because I think I was so out of it for a lot of that, in all honesty. Like he was an earth angel for me during that time. He really kept me afloat. And so he had wanted to go and do ayahuasca. I hadn't even heard of it. And it was almost like I was just given the guidance to trust where he was being led, and simultaneously where we were both being led, because we wanted to be together. And I was almost at the point where it was like, when I was in Vietnam, I'm deep in this thing now. I can't, you know, when you're so deep in it, it's like, I don't even really know. And it was like, he was almost like, I have this sense that, like, we've got this money together. Let's go here. Let's have this journey together. We know that there's medicine in whatever we're doing. And then again, with India, there was very much guidance to go to India. And I got that nudge again when I was in therapy, that I don't want to go back to just working a standard job. I want to start training in the thing that's helped me, and utilize those tools and be able to share them with others, so that I can then begin to really, it was for me to move myself out of the matrix and be able to start actually doing my own thing, and not being in that state of enslavement. And it's, again, we get what we need, not what we want, from this spiritual path.
We do get it. Yeah, we do. And I think for some of us who have not experienced that travel, and that, it just gives a real great insight of, you know, follow those nudges, because when you do follow those nudges and you do allow, so much unfolds, even when it's really painful. So you talked about your mental health and using certain tools. How did that really affect your journey? Was it an easy journey to and not easy, but like, what was the journey like with how you were feeling? Because you said you still kept going, although you had that sense of not feeling well mentally, and then obviously that physical release. What was it like for you going through that mentally, that process? Because sometimes we might not feel like we've got the strength to even move through physically, go to that place. What was that journey like?
In all honesty, it was either I drag myself to these places, or I'm dead.
Really?
Like that, yeah, because I'd been so hovering around that suicidal void for so long, where the pain of what I was carrying, and seemingly this kind of sense of hollowness, and this disconnect from my life, my reality, from my body. It was so intense. I would regularly be dissociated, you know, I'd regularly not be in the body. I would be regularly shut down. And so I was, you know, at various points I was offered medication, and I just knew that if I allow myself to go on I'm already numb. I already don't feel, and that terrifies me because I've got no way of gauging. I have no connection to my world anymore, you know? And so it was very much that if I don't drag myself to these places, I at least owe it to the people that love me, because I couldn't connect with myself. I at least owe it to my, you know, I feel very emotional saying this, but to my mum, to my boyfriend, who, you know, he was so amazing the whole time. He never made me, he always said, like, it's never a burden to be the one that is holding this together. He's like, it's an honor. He was just so humble and so noble throughout our relationship. And it was just like, I owe it to them to try and get better. And I think once I'd started the awakening process, I had enough glimmers to see, like, there's something here. I don't know what it is, but there's somewhat semblance that I sense I can get out of this.
Yeah.
It was a struggle. It was a struggle. Every step of the way was a struggle. And you know, this is kind of like how I eventually then actually, what I say, kind of broke the spell of my depression, was recognizing that I could travel to like 1 million different countries, and I could seek out, because I was really on that kind of path and mindset of, there's going to be a silver bullet, there's got to be a teacher, guide, guru, shaman, someone that's got the answer. And I was like, I was seeking them. I was like, because if I don't find them, I'm going to break down. I'm like, this will be it. So I was seeking ruthlessly for the answer. And after having done those extensive travel experiences, having been to many places, spoken to many very wise, masterful beings in various different formats, I landed at the embodied realization that no one saves me. And that I have to decide to no longer live bound by this depression. And for me, really what I'm getting at is, it's radical self-responsibility saved me. And it was recognizing that when I wake up, I've already decided that my day is going to feel empty, because that's how it's felt for so long. And I've already decided that there's no point in going to the gym, because nothing gives me life. Well, if I've already made that decision just when I open my eyes for the new day, that's what's going to meet me. So it was in that day, right? So it was recognizing, like, no one is coming. There's no silver bullet. It was, again, one of those really sobering, humble moments on the spiritual path, right? When you start awakening, you expect it's going to be unicorns and blissful. You realize that you're a human, and that there's a load of shit that you have to process and you have to be with. And that this is life. This is duality. There's pain here. There's death here. There's transformation and change always on this plane. We can't escape that. Spirituality is not supposed to be a ticket out of that. It's supposed to help us consciously manage this human experience with more grace and with more wisdom. And so actually it was really humbling myself to say, like, no one gets me out of this except for me. But yeah, I feel for and hear the people who are there and have been in those spaces. And having worked for many mental health charities and businesses that center around those. So the last business I worked for was Buckinghamshire Mind, which is a great charity. But I really saw that the mainstream approach to mental health is essentially like handing people a death sentence, because the narrative that I was bound working in these places was anxiety and depression. It's just it's like a lottery ticket. Something that people just get sometimes. Sometimes people just get depressed. Sometimes they just get anxious. It's a 1 in 3 chance of developing it. You know, here are some ways you can manage it. When someone is that deep in depression as I was, and like many are, what will or desire or drive do you have to really get up in the day when you're being told there's no way of ever getting out of this, and it's something you just manage for the rest of your life, that you only get to live a half life for the rest of your life? That's giving someone a death sentence. And
well,
so,
I don't think the intention is to give somebody a death sentence. Right? We have to be fair in that, but it feels like, you know, actually, that's not giving me the hope and the tools that I need. It's actually perpetuating that
Yeah.
That's
And
like,
it's not, and I'm not shaming or blaming the people on the ground. It's just the system itself.
yeah,
It does not have the awareness
yeah,
holistically
yeah,
to handle what we could call a mental health crisis, which is really, for me, just
mm-hmm.
a fragmentation from the self. It's just when many people have been through a lot in their lives, they're not given the tools to be able to emotionally process. Most people are living disembodied, dysregulated in their nervous systems. And this system is very under-equipped to deal with it. And it's not, you know, it's not the people on the ground's fault, but simultaneously this system is so unfit for purpose. And to me, from a more spiritual perspective, it's because the spiritual has been completely taken and extracted out of our day-to-day lives. So we're living as half of ourselves. Again, no wonder we're living a half life, because we're living without the presence of spirit. We're living without this deep knowingness of our true and expansive nature. And so I sound harsh when I'm talking about it, but having been in these environments so often, I see how when you're operating from inside that system, you are bound by red tape and limitations and very limited ideologies. The people have really good hearts that work in these systems. I've seen such good people who are also incredibly frustrated and burned out because the people they're treating aren't getting the help they need. And I just knew that from everything that had then been alchemized by that point, I know that this is not the way. And it's grateful, it's good that there are lifelines out there. It's not enough.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's just, you know, and at the end of it, I want to acknowledge that, you know, people do that providing what they need to provide. I know that many people will be supported, but as you say, there's holes and there's gaps that then, you know, spirituality and on that spiritual path, when you do awaken, actually for me anyway, there's a building that new identity and building that new structure and building that everything that is, I'm not identifying with the things the way that I used to, because I can see that, actually there's things missing. And then, like you say, going back to bringing that spiritual essence in it, rather than just relying on the humanness to, and the mind and the, just the level of understanding when you don't have the awareness that this path is and this life is bigger, then it's kind of a narrow lane to lead your life through. And so I recognize that, and I totally resonate with that. And I think that's why more of us are waking up and going on that spiritual awakening path. And that's why I want to have these conversations, because it's really, really important. I mean, we don't want to say, you know, this is not important as well. It is, as you said, there's so many beautiful things that people are doing, but it's not enough. And actually, we all have to play our part and all coming together in that healing and that. And again, having these kinds of discussions where we're openly sharing our journey and sharing our experience and being able to understand it a little bit. Like you said, you know, nobody's coming to say we have to do it, but then that reason why, and I loved your reasons why, that actually, you know, if I can't do it for myself at first, I want to do it for the family. And then actually I need to do it for myself, because it is a journey and it is only our journey. Many people don't understand that journey until you're actually in it, until you've actually experienced it. So thank you so we talked about contribution. You're changing you didn't want to go into this world of working for someone else, actually building your business and spending that time away and doing the yoga teacher training. Are you still doing the yoga?
I don't teach much at the moment. No, I think.
Did you finish it?
No. So I have retrained as a yoga teacher. I did it when I was back in the UK after, but for that, when I was in India, I didn't finish the course.
You didn't finish. So I was saying, for your purpose, and for obviously massive health transformation. Emotionally, you talked about that, you know, your mental health, environment, you talked about the traveling, relationships, honoring your partner. I love that. And, you know, what an incredible man to be able to hold space and not judge and put it, you know, incredible. And those spiritual, and being, you know, in the environment of the tribe and their history and all of their wisdom. And so all of what I call the 7 freedoms frequency, what about finances? What finances affected? Because obviously you've traveled. That requires, you've said, you know, you have this level of saving that a lot of us want to go out traveling. Like you've said, you know, you're awakening, that traveling to build those finances. Or were you just supported and like, yeah, let's go? Or was it like, okay, well, I'm going to plan this, I'm going to plan that? How did that look like to be able to fund those things and make the decisions that you've made?
I think it was very much so. When my ex and I were together, he worked more than I did. I
Right.
still worked for most of the time we were together, but
Mm-hmm.
he was working, and there was always that sense of, like, as I said, we'd kind of been given a longer term vision. Like, I think we want to go to South America next year, or I want to do my yoga. I suppose we were kind of minimalist and humble
Yeah.
in how we lived. We looked for the cheapest accommodation we could find.
Yeah.
When we were together, it was such a beautiful soulmate relationship in that we didn't really need very much to keep us occupied. We got on so well. Simple, that we could occupy ourselves with simple things. What mattered to us the most was like the quality of our life. So we focused on eating good food, but
Yeah.
other than that, and the company of each other. But other than that, we
It
didn't
was
invest in things that, like, in flippant ways
material.
that were going, yeah, materially. And that's something that I'm now healing from, because the
Right.
beginning half of my journey was very, especially with the influences of other lives I've had as well, and my upbringing with the church, I had a very minimalist slash, like, almost like an austerity mindset. Like, you'll have nothing and be content with it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
be happy with being the humble one that just walks this path of devotion, very much as you would if you were in a monastery, or if you were in a nun, or, you know, if you
Yeah.
were a monk. It's very much that life of austerity in
Yeah.
service to something bigger. I've lived that life many other times. I've been that person that
Yeah.
was in either Christianity or Buddhism, that walked that path. And
Yeah.
now I know that for this life,
Yeah.
I'm being guided to actually reintegrate
Yeah.
materialism in a conscious way, to
Yeah.
recognize that it's okay, now that I'm not a monk on a mountain, to
Yeah.
have these needs met, and that I
Yeah.
have to find ways that
Yeah.
feel aligned with my soul to get those needs met. But at the
Yeah.
time when we were traveling, it was very, it was much more helpful having my partner there, because it was a
Mhm.
joint. It was joint.
Yeah.
Everything was shared when we were traveling, and then
Yeah.
everything was built up together, and we split that as well.
Mhm.
And I think again, it comes down to, like, if you've got the goal to travel and you've got to prioritize, you've
Yeah.
got the goal to travel. It's like, well, how much do you want the different life? How much do you want that experience, you know? And I think I was so not content with whatever I'd been doing before, that was enough of a motivation to say, I'll keep going towards, like, working and doing what I need to do to build the money to go for the next thing, because that's more important to me than looping where I've already been.
Yeah.
This has been more challenging since the Kundalini awakening in
Right.
2019. So
Yeah.
that the process with the Kundalini, it's no longer in my hands. And so
Right.
I spent 3 years. It's only really the Kriya, and so for people that aren't aware of a Kundalini awakening, there are many ways in which this energy purifies us and the
Mhm.
physical body. Some of
Mhm.
those are called Kriya, which can be involuntary movements. It can be trembling, shaking. It can be going into spontaneous mudras, which are gestures in yoga. It can be, there are a myriad of different ways in which this energy moves you, and they are not really things you can control. So after I started the Kundalini awakening, I tried a few standard jobs.
Mhm.
And because I was being asked to completely collapse any idea that I should work, any idea of how I should work, I was being asked to collapse an entire identity structure again, an even deeper one. It wiped everything out. Everything I tried collapsed. And I would start having really big careers. I was working and I was going through these at the same time. I'd be standing in the cafe I was working in, and I would have to be channeling because the energy was moving so much. It's been unbearable to
Wow.
be in forcing a normal life and
Yeah.
also battling this process. And the only thing I've come to is to surrender to it, because it's
Yeah.
been much bigger than me and my idea of what I'm supposed to be and who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then the more I've surrendered, the more this energy has fortified my field. That's the way I describe it. So the
Yeah.
more embodied I've become,
Yeah.
the more rooted in my body, the less scattered my energy has become. And now I'm finally at a point where I no longer, enough of the energy has anchored, enough of the trauma energy has been released.
Mm-hmm.
And my nervous system is starting to regulate enough now after this complete system upgrade to recognize, like, now I'm ready to start beginning to build in a way that's conscious. But I have not been at that point since my ex and I broke up in 2020, and it's been really hard.
Yeah, I relate to what you've said. Obviously, not my journey hasn't been as extreme as yours in some ways, but yeah, and I think then that's I just felt called to have the conversation to break down our life in that way and connect it to that spiritual awakening in these 7 areas for me, and then really explore them and see how they're unfolding, why they're unfolding, and how they just have a knock-on effect to the other areas, and actually just working on and just slowly. But we can't do everything all at once. But when we're on this path, it's like, well, if I don't do something about this, I'm not going to have something. Do you know, it's going to have an impact on this for the duration. And it's like, what are we willing to do to shift and to release? I think you've been so courageous on your journey. You've been through a lot, like physically and mentally. And you're standing and you're smiling, and it's just like, wow. I haven't heard, because we talked yesterday, as we said when we began this at the top of the hour. We talked yesterday for like three hours, and I know that there's so much that you've condensed into this episode and this you sharing your story. So I really appreciate that. We've talked about your spiritual ascension tools, but can you, like, a spiritual ascension journey a little bit, but can you elaborate on what you think that for our spiritual alchemy giveaway, what would be something that you do, how you help and how you serve your clients? You can go into detail if you like. What would be one thing or a pathway or some steps that someone can take who's been on a similar path to you, even if it's 1 or 2 or 3 of the things that you've been on, because you've been through so much, and I know that people will resonate. What is the gift or the tool or the journey or the next step that you would give someone based on how you serve? Like, what would be like, okay, well, you have to, not have to, but like, I suggest trying this. Like, we try on different things. Yeah, what would be the thing for me? I'm like, my go-to is a vision board and a journal. Like, get clear on your vision. That's what I do. That's what helped me to re-identify like who I am and what I want to experience. So what would you say? Because you've got a lot of expertise and you do so much. So what would it be?
For me, it's really focus on being a conscious human. So actually, it's a lot less glamorous than we might expect from like a spiritual awakening process, but it's actually really tending to the basics of your humanity. So something I'll often do with clients is get them to start doing a needs check-in throughout the day. So when you wake up, scan your body. Do you need to pee? Do you need to wee? Like, same thing. Do you need to eat? Do you need to move?
Yeah.
Actually starting, because most people are disembodied, so they really don't have awareness of the body, the sensations, the feedback they're getting. So for me, it's as basic as when children live very embodied generally. So it's like, oh, Mom, I'm hungry. Oh, I need a wee. I need a wee. And they know their body signals. Most adults are covering and distorting their body signals with coffee, with alcohol, with drugs, with television, with their mindset, with chatter. So they're very much living in the mental realm, very, very detached from the body sensations. So for me, it's actually we start that descent back into the body. So it's like, do you need check-in physically? What do you need? How are you mentally? What's going on up there? I like to do like a little, and like you, journaling's been one of my biggest tools. I use it as a tool of self-inquiry for myself and my clients all the time, asking questions, self-dialoguing, peeling back the layers of journaling. And so I will often say to clients, if you've got a lot going on in your head, witness it by writing, like time yourself 1 or 2 minutes, write down every single thought, do like a thought dump, write down every thought that comes to you and just look at the kind of thoughts that you're having. Are those thoughts that are helpful to have?
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, oh, I hate my body. Oh, he didn't text me back. And you start to see. It's like, and then unrelated. Oh, that was a really good advert. And it's like you just start seeing the collateral noise of the mind.
Yeah.
And actually, that probably leads me on to the next one. Is like, okay, you check in with like the body, the emotional body, the mental body. Really, it's just actually starting to reestablish connection to the self. So you're saying like, how am I in this moment? What do I need?
Right.
So really getting my clients clear on like what needs are and how do I meet them. If you need a wee, you go to the toilet. If you are then starting to feel sad, you then develop what do you need in order to do that? Do you need to cry? You know, actually I'm feeling like I've got a load of energy. Do you need to go for a run? Does your body need movement? So reestablishing that coherence between the body's signals and language and our being able to kind of translate that language. Journaling. So really just, for me, questions are the best doorway in. So whenever things are coming up, triggers, you know, we get triggered all the time in life. So use your triggers and get your journal out, you know. So it's like someone will make a comment or write a certain message back to you or whatever the situation is, and something will start triggering you, right? You'll get defensive, or that aspect of self that feels like it needs to attack or defend or shield or guard, that gets heightened. So you get in your journal and you start asking, what was it about that experience that really bothered me? And then you just start peeling back the layers. When have I felt like this before? What other situations made me feel like that before? Is this something that I feel often? How early did I start feeling this? Can I remember a time in childhood when I felt that? You know, really starting to just become conscious that this life is mirroring back to us our subconscious content. So actually, like, what's in front of me right now, it's not really about the man that said the thing. It's not really about the person that cut me off on the road. It's about the thing that they're mirroring back, the charge within me that I still carry that had such a reaction to that thing.
Right.
So the example I often use is if someone cuts you off on the road when you've got road rage, and you've got road rage as a response to it, rather. Okay, yes, that person should take responsibility for driving better, but you can't change them driving like an asshole. What you can do is notice that I got really angry there. So that's showing you that there's a lot of anger that can be relatively easily triggered. What happens to my anger throughout my life? Where has that gone? Like, how often do I express anger? What's my relationship to anger? Starting to use the world we're experiencing as a mirror to start getting to know ourselves better, all the many aspects of us. And the final thing, which is, as I touched on earlier, is radical self-responsibility. So it's really scanning, and we spoke about this a bit yesterday, and this is a practice, it's a process for life. It's not a one and done thing, because we're going to continue. Life is not, and the spiritual awakening process, for anyone listening, is not linear. It's not you get here, you start here, you get here. It's a spiral, which means that, it's like we are taken on the same, back to the same triggers, often the same core wounds, and we're asked to dig deeper, peel back deeper layers again and again and again to refine our consciousness. And so this is a process. We're going to drop off and then we have to hop back on if we want to choose ourselves. But for me, it's self-responsibility, and it's actually like recognizing and being really accountable for, as I said, when I was depressed, how am I showing up in my day? What thoughts do I choose to invest in? You know, how do I choose to show up for myself? So when I was really kind of in the depths of my awakening process, I'd completely gone away from materialism. So I didn't invest in clothes. I didn't invest in looking nice. And then it's not a big part of my focus now, but I recognize that when I, for example, like put something that I really enjoy wearing on, what it does is it activates a certain frequency in me. The woman that actually really can be a bit sassy, or, you know, is like fierce and boundaried or sexy or whatever it is, right? So we recognize that this is a playground. We can use our embodiment, this vehicle, how we dress ourselves, how we eat, how we move, to activate more aspects of our consciousness. So it's like, well, what do you want to activate? Do you want to activate the mother archetype? Do you want to activate the warrior? Do you want to activate like the queen who's wealthy and whatever? So what do you have to do to be that woman? What action do you need to take? How does she think? How does she move? What boundaries does she have? How often is she scrolling mindlessly on her social media? You know, does she entertain men that treat her that way? You know, it's like we then start recognizing like we can't control everything going on out there, but we can control how we're responding, how we're showing up in every moment for ourselves. And it's recognizing that that simple act of taking the power back for ourselves is what changes everything.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think those are the three: the embodiment stuff, just getting back to the body, getting in the journal and starting a self-inquiry practice, and radical self-responsibility, recognizing that everything we ingest, we digest in our consciousness, is going to have a consequence. So what are we choosing to bring into this body, into this field? Does it serve, or does it actually hamper our where we want to go, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. You shared some gold and some nuggets. I think that's when you're saying, you know, you've been in different environments, because it's going to anchor different thoughts, different feelings, different, do you know what I mean? So it's, and what do you need? I need to move. What do you need? And asking those questions. And I love that. And so, you know, you might need to replay and just write some of those things down. So Tasha, where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you and work with you? Have a look at your YouTube channel and what you do over there.
So I'm on Instagram as Temple of Akasha with underscores, and you know, we can you'll find that if you go to my website, which is www.templeofakasha.com, and my YouTube channel is at Temple of Akasha as well. So that's where I'm present most of the time. My email address and all of my details are in there as well. And you know, it feels really great. I've got like a budding community of people that are really active in terms of giving me content requests and really like providing feedback, commentary on how they're going through their journey, things that they would like to see more of. So I love people to get involved and give me feedback. As a projector in human design, I work really well when people invite me to share things. It activates my energy. So I just love, you know, for everyone to get involved and to share what it is they need. And if I can help, then I will. So, and the one thing I also wanted to mention, just to close off, was you mentioned earlier about the travel, and what came through when you said that was each place we go holds, we could say, codes of remembrance for the soul. So the soul, often when we get nudges to go somewhere, the soul is directing, because the land is living, it holds memory. The land is alive, we're alive. The land is waking up from a very deep sleep, just as we are. And so actually, when we go to, especially to places like sacred sites, I'm really being called to go to Egypt. When we go to these sacred lands or places in the world that we're very guided to, they will awaken aspects of our consciousness that we're sleeping, that are very necessary for the puzzle piece. So for me, it's yes, follow the guidance if it's there. Trust, even if the nudge doesn't make sense, there's some gold there for you. There's some deeper layers of remembrance coming to the surface.
So did you say your next place is Egypt that's calling you?
It's been a long time. Yeah, it's been for about a year and a half. It's been calling. So as resources allow, it will be Egypt for the next sacred site place. And I've been told that I'll host retreats there at some point. But for now, I need to go. I need to go, and I need to feel the land. And it's a very activating portal. I've heard many people say that you don't return from Egypt the same person, especially the sacred sites as they are now with the energy on the planet. So yeah, not a light trip. I think that's going to require.
So we've got members in our community, and my lead soul guided instructor Ramona Miles was the first person I interviewed on this summit season last month, and she is in Egypt. She's moved out to Egypt as a spiritual digital nomad and hosting things, and it's calling me, so I'll probably join you.
I mean, maybe we've got some work to do in Egypt.
We said, you know, when you call in your soul tribe, and we're like, what else is there, you know, for us? You just never, and we're both in the UK, right? So it's just beautiful. It's just really, really nice to connect with you, have a conversation with you. And guys, if you heard any background noise, I apologize, but that's just life as it is. So I've really enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you are new to the Spiritual Awakening Annual YouTube Summit, hopefully you found value. I'm sure that you found value just in a conversation, just hearing somebody else's experience again, knowing that you're not alone, and actually then reaching out, actually actively reaching out and saying, that you could do with some support. You don't have to do it all alone. You don't have to like wear everything on your shoulder and just say, at the end of the day, we all could use, support at some point in our journey, and especially when, as light workers and spiritual entrepreneurs, we expect other people to take our support and our, well, I can help you with it. And oftentimes we don't then reach out and say, actually, it's my time to up level. It's my time to go to that next level. And actually, I don't know what I don't know. And if somebody's been down the path that we want to go down, we can see that, then it's absolutely okay to reach out and say, you know what, this is the time where I've made that decision that no more of this. I'd like to experience something else. So that's what I just feel guided to say. So I'm going to wrap up this episode. Again, the Spiritual Awakening and YouTube Summit, we stream out on the 2 middle Wednesdays of the month. I call them Binge Watch Wednesdays, and the season lasts from October through to April. So I've got another episode for you today at 9 p.m. So Debbie's coming in and sharing her spiritual awakening story. You'll see a playlist on my YouTube channel at the SoulLegacyTV, Spiritual Business Success with Iona. We have the attendees Facebook group. We'll have links for Natasha in the show notes and the description. Again, reach out to a YouTube channel, a website, anywhere that you feel that actually, she can serve you. I just wish you the best in that, because I know that she'll hold space for you and serve you well. So that is it for this episode. Thank you so much, Tasha,
Thank you for having me, Iona.
sharing.
Truly. You're watching.
You're welcome. I know that we had people in and out. I'm not sure what that comment was, but we had people in and out. And so thank you again. And thank you for watching on the replay. Let us know. We will come back to the comments. It's going to be here. I'm not locking it off. It's too much gold to just lock off. So I shall see you on the next episode. Take care.
Take care, guys. Thank you.